Okay, welcome to the Spring Yoga of Radiant Presence Retreat. I prepared a sheet that we're going to go over in depth. I'll go over it in depth. You can follow along or not as you choose. It's very concentrated, but I'll be going over it word by word, and so hopefully that'll be something that will be meaningful.
Yes, I do. You have plenty, because that isn't me. She's sitting there.
Yeah, we got lots.
I'm sitting there too. She shakes. I just can't sit still as well. She's her usual trickery.
Checking out how many papers have been.
Larry is suggesting we can speed read it.
So this sheet presents an overview from a particular point of view of what this retreat is about. And I'll be going into the ramifications of it in great detail, and of course we'll be working with this and discussing this and being engaged with this to the extent you want to pursue it over the next 4 days. So I will read it to you now, and then we will back up and go through it in detail. When the eye is single, the entirety is filled with light. This is a quote from Jesus from the Gospel of Thomas. The yoga of radiant presence is the discovery of the substance of your experiencing and realizing the absolute inclusiveness of the ongoing intrinsic transcendental engagement with that. This substance, radiant presence, is entirely transcendental, i.e., it's entirely beyond conceiving of, beyond specifying, beyond defining, beyond locating, etc., and yet is the concrete stuff that every aspect of experience whatsoever entirely consists of. So is being ongoingly engaged with absolute nakedness and intimacy, as the presence of your actual experience. This right here. This being the case, this substance is noticeable, discoverable, investigable, explorable, and knowable. Since the faculty by which all of this investigation is effected is it itself, this faculty has the absolutely transcendental nature intrinsic to the substance. So, the transcendentality of the substance is no impediment to the transcendental intelligence of the knowing. And it can be fully known. Presence indicates the actuality, the real being of this substance. That's this actuality right here, this actuality of your experience. And radiant indicates its inherent nature of spontaneously generating infinite apparent experiential characteristics and implications, as well as their intrinsic apprehension as what we call experience. The yoga consists of first noticing, then coming to fully realize that there is in actuality nothing and has never been or will ever be anything other than this condition of absolutely inclusive, transcendental, intrinsic engagement of radiant presence with itself. That's what this is. It's here. What you call your experience is radiant presence being with itself. We'll go into this in great length. So let's back up. I'm going to leave off the quote at the top till the end, and we'll go back to that. So the first paragraph, the yoga of radiant presence is a discovery of the substance of your experiencing and realizing the absolute inclusiveness of the ongoing intrinsic transcendental engagement with that. So, the discovery of the substance of your experiencing. What is experience? This is not an abstract thing. Your experience is right here, right now. Check it out. This is for real. This is all that there is here is your experience, as far as you can find, as far as you can know, right? What is it? What's it made of? It's something. It's not nothing, right? Here it is. If it was nothing, how would you be? What would you be experiencing? What would you be seeing? What would you be feeling? Now, of course, we're used to relating to our experience in terms of how we qualify it as the objects and things and conditions. Oh, I'm seeing, a bunch of people sitting in a room. I'm hearing, words coming from my mouth and echoing around the room. I'm feeling my butt on the chair and the temperature of the room and all this. We're used to qualifying that. If you ask somebody what they're experiencing, they might say, I'm seeing a room, I'm this, I'm thinking this thought, I'm feeling this kind of feeling, I'm, a little full from dinner, and I'm, So, but if someone was to say that, what are they actually referring to? They're referring to experiential qualities that are appearing within the field of their experience, right? If it's appearing, what is it that's appearing? So I look and I see a room and I see people sitting in chairs. So what does that refer to? It refers to experiencing patterns, right? Patterns of light. And I'm used to qualifying the patterns of light, and so I can say, well, it's patterns of light. I don't, I'm calling them rooms and people and chairs and so on and so forth, but that's just naming shapes. But how do I know I'm seeing shapes? Well, something is present. What is it that's present? What is, you might say, well, light's present. Okay, cool. So what is light? Putting another name on it, putting another label on it doesn't actually answer any questions, doesn't actually address the fundamental issue. What is light that is present? And most fundamentally, light is not just present, light is experienced. Light is an experience. Light is not an object. Light is an experience. So what is this experience? What is light? What is sound? What is thought? What is sensation? What are these, call them energies, call them, weird qualities that show up in the field of your experience. And this is not abstraction. This is what's here. And there's nothing but that here. There's nothing here that you can find but the field of your experience, right? I mean, try and find something other than your experience. Where would you look? How would you engage with it? You have to look within your experience. You have to look within the field of your experience, because that's the only place you can find anything. And all you find in the field of your experience is experience, right? All you find is experience. What is that? Experience is a word. It's an abstraction. But yet this isn't an abstraction. This is not an idea. This is not a thought. There's something here. What is it that's here? How is it that's here? This that is here, this actuality that is here, I'm referring to as the substance of your experience. It's something. It's not a simple something, but it's very specifically something. Now, we're used to qualifying this something that's here into all of these different, fields, let's say. There's light shows up in vision, there's sound shows up in the field of hearing, there's thought shows up in the field of mentality, the sensation shows up in the field of touch, and so on and so forth. So you have all these qualifications. But if you look very closely at any of these fields, they're ultimately different textures of the same thing. They're different textures of experience itself. And again, experience is a word that sounds kind of like an abstraction. But the fact, the actuality that is here, this is for real. This is not an abstraction, right? This is that which is not an abstraction. Everything else is an abstraction. All the names, all the ideas, all the qualifications is an abstraction. But this that is here is for real, right? This is real. This is actual. This is here. What is the this that is here? It's something. And all of its ramifications and aspects that we have all these qualifications for, all these theories about, are about aspects of one thing, aspects of one condition, aspects of one event. And for this purpose, I'm calling this actuality here the substance. So this whatever it is that's here, this thing that is here, this condition that is here, this actuality that is here, this substance. Because it is a substance. Everything that you think of as substance, I mean, I feel this cup, it's here. I mean, there's solidity, it's got temperature. I mean, it couldn't possibly be more concrete. What is this concreteness that is being experienced? Is it in the cup? Say I was dreaming last night and I stubbed my toe on a rock, right? What is the concreteness of that rock that stubs my toe in the dream? Is it in the rock? All the qualities that are experienced are in this. And they show up in all different sorts of degrees, as we all know, in terms of all the astounding, inconceivable spectrum of experiential characteristics that shows up in the course of our experiencing. But the actuality, the presence, the solidity of anything is the solidity of this substance that is here, that is this actuality that alone exists. Try and find anything other than the field of your experience. You can't do it. And what is that field made of? Right? I mean, we can come up with all sorts of fancy abstractions. Oh, it's consciousness. It's consciousness experiencing sensoria. It's biochemical activity in the central nervous system. It's this, it's that, it's the other. But all these abstractions, what actuality are they referring to? The abstractions aren't anything. They're words, they're theories, they're hypotheses. But this is not a hypothesis, is it? This is for real. This is here. This is the only reality. I mean, if someone asks you, what's real, where do you look? Look at your experience, right? This is the touchstone. This is the canon of reality itself. If I say, oh, there's a UFO of pink elephants just landed in the center of this room and they've gotten out with ray guns and they're zapping everyone, you might look around and say, that's an interesting idea, but it's not real to me because I don't experience it. So experience is the gauge of actuality. Experience is the gauge of reality. So this field of your experience that is here, that is present, is what is real. And it alone is real. Anything else, any other qualities to be judged and to be accepted as being actually real have to be here in your experience somewhere. Right? Or you may or have to have been in your experience at some time, or you expect them to be in your experience at some time. If I say the moon is in the sky, I say I don't see the moon now, but I expect if I went outside it would be in my experience. Okay, cool, that's fair enough. So that's a reasonable assumption. But still in all, the touchstone is the fact of it being present in your experience, right? Now, another interesting thing about experience is spinning off into implications of this. You can't find anything but your experience, right? As far as you know, your field of experience alone exists, right? As far as you can verify, you are the only experiencer. Now, there may or may not be. Of course, everyone may be experiencing, and that's a reasonable hypothesis, and of course we're all used to supposing that. But you can't know that for fact, because you cannot experience another experiencer. And if you did, it would be you. Right? If I could read your mind, the thoughts that I would be reading would be showing up in my experience, so it would be my experience. Right? But look at this. I mean, this is really self-evident and really quite obvious. I mean, it's completely self-evident. Every 2-year-old knows this, that it's all about me, right? This is my experience. You all are just the extras, right? And for you, it's all about you, right? Everyone else is just the extras. And this is just, it's completely obvious. I mean, it's absurd not to, it's absurd to even question that or consider alternatives. I mean, of course, for political correctness and all we do, because, you piss the guys off with the guns and you end up in jail or shot or something. So, but anyway, that's a little spin-off. So, the yoga of radiant presence is the discovery of the substance of your experiencing. So what is it that is here? Something is here. Whether or not it's a thing in any simple sense, something is here. This substance, this presence. And realizing the absolute inclusiveness of the ongoing, intrinsic, transcendental engagement with that. Now, this is a whole string of words. It's kind of interesting, okay? Ongoing, intrinsic, transcendental engagement. There's 4 words, okay? It's ongoing. Does your experience have any, does it ever, take a break? Does your experience ever take 5 and all of a sudden shut down and then sort of resume sometime? Experience is absolutely integral with itself, right? It doesn't come, it doesn't go. It's ongoing. It is. And there's no isn't, is there? You can't find an isn't. It just is. Experience is. So this is ongoing. It is intrinsic engagement. Okay. So your experience is appearing, right? I assume, right? Everyone's experience is appearing. So, we ordinarily say, well, I'm seeing my experience. I'm experiencing my experience. My consciousness is experiencing the world or experiencing whatever, the fields of my experience and so on and so forth. We have all these ways of putting. What is this? This is an engagement. This is not, experience isn't just here as an inert fact, is it? It's not just like a lump that just boom, is here. It's not like that, is it? It's very intimately like with itself. Something is with something here. And we're used to thinking that, well, I'm with this, right? I'm with the world. I'm with the field of my experience. I'm with this, right? And this is all very commonplace. It's, completely common language to I'm experiencing my experience. Of course I am. You're experiencing your experience. Sure. No duh, right? Very matter of fact. But look real closely, okay? Experience is showing up. It's not like experience is there and there's some gap or some lag where there's something here that senses, oh, look, there's something there, I better check it out. And it sort of moseys on over and looks at it and checks it out. It's not like that, is it? The actual appearing of experiential qualities is it's being experienced. So the supposition of all this mechanism of consciousness is experiencing the world, or this is experiencing that, this sort of elaborate machinery, this elaborate, polarization of this and of that, and some medium of engagement. It's all sloppy. It's all sloppy supposition. It's not like that. Apparition is apprehension. Appearance is apprehension. It's not like appearance is an objective fact and then apprehension is some subjective fact. You can't find a subjective and you can't find an objective, can you? I mean, look for yourself. When something appears, when anything appears, when any experiential quality, let's call it, appears, that apparition, that very flash, is its being perceived, is its being engaged. So the apparition is engagement. The flash of apparition is engagement. It's not like there's a flash and then something over here that engages. We're used to thinking of it that way, but that's just sloppy abstractions. If you look at the concrete dynamism of your actual experience, there's no process, there's no mechanism, there's no intermediary, there's no something going to meet something. Everything just appears. And that's it. And when it appears, that's the whole show, right? I mean, there's nothing added, there's nothing extra that has to happen then. It's like the apparition is it, right? So this is an intrinsic engagement. This substance is an intrinsic engagement. The substance is in its apparition, and as it appears, that very appearing is intrinsic engagement. Okay? It's ongoing intrinsic engagement because, hey, does it ever stop? Does it ever start? Does it ever, it just is, and without an isn't. It's on without an off. It's the given. So ongoing intrinsic engagement. And it's transcendental, ongoing intrinsic transcendental engagement. What does transcendental mean? Transcendental means you can't get a handle on it. You can't wrap your head around it. You can't analyze it. You can't, parse it. You can't break it down into its component parts and suss it out and figure out what's going on with it, right? So here's this flash, right? And we call it, experiencing vision. Bang, there it is. It just appears, and that in that apparition is the experiencing. What happens there? You can't say. It's dumbfounding. It's completely obvious. It's right here. You can check it out all you want, but you can't figure it out. You can't say anything about it. You can't sort it out. You can generate all sorts of elaborate theories effortlessly, all sorts of bullshit, and of course as humans we're very used to that. And that will continue to happen, as long as history persists, no doubt. But Does any of it hit the mark? Is any of it like, just in the simple apparition, it already is what it is. Completely, comprehensively, inclusively, nakedly, obviously, and dumbfoundingly. You can't sort out experiencing. You can't make sense of it. You can't parse it. You can't analyze it. You can't, define it. You can't localize it even. You can't. So anyway, we have this ongoing intrinsic engagement that is transcendental. Ongoing intrinsic transcendental engagement. And the engagement is with the substance. What's engaged with the substance? Well, you can't say nothing's engaged with it, but its appearance is engagement. So you could say, well, it's engaged with itself, but what does that mean? But there is engagement, right? There is profound engagement, right? There's an absolute intoxicated, almost an addiction to this engagement, to this participation. But there's nothing. You can't find anything that's participating with anything that's being participated with, and yet, just in its apparition, in its presence, it is a participation. It is an engagement, right? And check it out for yourself. I mean, I'm asserting all these things, and it's not the gospel. I mean, it may or may not be the gospel, but it's useless to you unless you check it out for yourself. The advantage of this is just to look at it and see how it fits into your universe, to your reality, to your understanding. So, realizing the absolute inclusiveness of the ongoing intrinsic transcendental engagement with that. Ongoing, absolute inclusiveness. This engagement, can you find anything that is outside, that's being left out? Can you find anything outside of your engagement with your experience? I mean, the whole universe is here. The moon exists because it appears as an engagement in your experience, right? The whole human race exists, as far as you know, solely because it appears as an engagement within your experience, right? The Andromeda Galaxy exists, as far as you know, solely because it appears as an engagement within your experience. Is there anything that's left out? Is there anything that's missing? Is there anything that's some other category? You can't find it. All you can find is this event, this condition, this fact of your experiencing, right? It's the only actuality. So this is the absolute inclusiveness of the ongoing intrinsic transcendental engagement with that, with this substance, with this actuality. And it is an engagement. It is engaged with itself, you could say. So, to recap, the first paragraph says, the yoga of radiant presence is the discovery of the substance of your experiencing. This that is here. And realizing the absolute inclusiveness of the ongoing intrinsic transcendental engagement with that, with this substance that is here. Second paragraph reads, this substance, radiant presence, is entirely transcendental. That is, it is entirely beyond conceiving of, specifying, defining, locating, etc. And yet, it is the concrete stuff that every aspect of experience whatsoever entirely consists of. So is being ongoingly engaged with absolute nakedness and intimacy as the presence of your actual experience, this actuality that is here, your experience that is real, that is here, that is what's happening as far as you're aware, right? So, let's back up and see what this paragraph is constructed of. So this substance, this that is here, right? This you experience, this actuality. I'm calling it radiant presence, and we'll look more specifically into why I call it that a little later in the paper. This substance is entirely transcendental. What this is that is here is entirely transcendental. What does that mean? It means it's entirely beyond conceiving of. You can't form an idea of it. You can't describe it accurately. You can't define it. You can't map it. You can't draw it. I mean, and paradoxically, you can't define or draw or map or conceive of or describe anything else. And everything that has ever been described by a human being ever in all of history has been nothing but this, right? And how much do these descriptions diverge from each other, right? And yet, everyone's describing exactly the same thing. Everyone's talking about the only thing they can talk about, which is this actuality of your experience. So this substance is entirely transcendental, is entirely beyond conceiving of, right? It's beyond specifying, point to it, indicate it, qualify it with regard to something else. Say, I mean this, not that. All of that kind of an effort, all of that kind of a mode of approach, of analysis, just it doesn't go anywhere. It's absurd. It's completely absurd, right? It just doesn't work. If this is completely actual, and yet you can't pin it down. You can't define it. You can't specify it. It's beyond defining. It's beyond locating. Where is it? Where is this? Here's the substance. Here's the actuality of your experience. Where is it? Well, it's here. Okay, sure, but here is just a euphemism for where it is, but it doesn't answer the question. Where is it? Where is your experience happening? What's it sitting on? What's it in? What's holding it up? What's it suspended from? What dimension is it in? Right? Can you locate it? Where is it? Is that even meaningful? I mean, it's just a given. Location comes from experience, not the other way around. And most of experience is completely beyond locating, right? When you're in deep sleep, where are things? When you're unconscious, where are things? Well, they're here. Well, sure, they're here. Or maybe they're there, which is just a complicated way of saying here. But where is that? Well, here, in my experience. Okay, where is that? You can't say, can you? It's just a given. And this, again, is a way of beginning to indicate the absolutely transcendental nature of this substance, of this actuality that is here, this thing that is here. And yet, even though this substance is transcendental, you can't make any headway whatsoever at pinning it down or making sense of it or even finding it. Although, it's sort of a no-brainer. It doesn't ever go away, so you don't even need to find it. But even though it is completely transcendental, it is the concrete stuff that every aspect of experience whatsoever entirely consists of. So everything, all the concreteness of your experiencing, this is hard, this is loud, that hurts, all this, it's very concrete, it's very actual, it's very solid, it's really present, not present in some abstract sense, but it's solidly present, right? I mean, I see you, I really see you, right? This is it's not vague, it's not squishy, it's very solid, and all this solidity, the solidity of this cup isn't in the cup, it's in experience. Experience is what's solid, not cups and the ground and fists. They aren't solid. Experience is solid. Look at a dream, right? You can be in a car crash in a dream. You can bash your thumb with a hammer in a dream, right? You can get stabbed in a dream. You can get punched in a dream, And when you're dreaming, it can feel just as solid as it might feel, let's say, in this condition we call the waking state, right? Where's that solidity coming from? The solidity of a hammer in a dream, the solidity of a fist in a dream, the solidity of a knife in a dream, the solidity of an angry person or being in a dream is in your face. What's that? Where's that coming from? It's not coming from the hammer, it's not coming from the person, it's not coming from the thing. It's just a dream, there's nothing there. It's coming from the dreaming. It's coming from the substance of experience itself, which when we're dreaming, we call dreaming. When we're awake, we don't call it waking. I mean, we might, but we call it, no, this is the real world. This is really here. Your experience is really here. When you're dreaming, your experience is really here in the dream, right? And when you're in deep sleep, your experience is really here in deep sleep. And then what's going on? You don't even ask the question, let alone find any answer. So, that's a little digression. So, the substance, radiant presence, is entirely transcendental, i.e., is entirely beyond conceiving of, beyond specifying, beyond defining, beyond locating, etc., and yet is the concrete stuff that every aspect of experience whatsoever entirely consists of. So is being ongoingly engaged with absolute nakedness and intimacy as the presence of your actual experience. So the presence of anything, which is, presence is very obvious, with something hard. But presence is obvious with any experience. Any experience is being experienced because it is present, right? If it wasn't present, you wouldn't be being experienced. You can have a thought, you can seem to be very vague, there's some wispy little But if it's there in your experience, let's say, the way we usually put it, if it's actually being experienced, it is present, it is actual, it is solid, it is as present as, if someone threw a rock at you and hit you in the face. No more or less present than that, just a different textural dimension or something, you might say. So this substance is being ongoingly engaged with absolute nakedness and intimacy as the presence of your actual experience. So when something is present, it is this substance that is present, right? It is the substance of experience that is present. And whatever object or condition may seem to be embodying that substance is a will-o'-the-wisp. It's being borrowed within, just like in a dream. The hardness of anything in a dream that feels hard isn't in the thing, it's in the dreaming. It's being put there by the dreaming because the dreaming can feel hard. Dreaming can feel soft. Dreaming can feel like anything. Waking can feel like anything. It can feel hard. It can feel soft. Right? It can feel fuzzy. It can feel like just shining, right? But it's still just this that is here. It is something that is here. It's an actuality. So, this substance, radiant presence, is entirely transcendental. It is entirely beyond conceiving of, specifying, defining, locating, etc. And yet is the concrete stuff that every aspect of experience whatsoever entirely consists of. And so it is being ongoingly engaged with absolute nakedness and intimacy as the presence of your actual experience. I could have said it's the presence of all your actual experience. So this is here. And everything that seems to show up in your experience is just this that is here. It's something that is here. And the fact that it appears or presents in this bewildering, infinite range of characteristics and textures and experiential qualities and solidities and degrees of solidity and all of that is just part of its weirdness, it's part of its strangeness. It can look like, it can feel like your feet on the ground. It can feel like a vague thought, right? It can feel like an emotion. It can feel like anything. But what is being felt is the same thing. Where do these things come from? Where does the texture of thought come from? Where does the texture of the ground under your feet come from? Well, it comes from experience. And so all of this incredible range of characteristics which seem so different from each other are just this. This being the case, i.e., that your experience is reality is being ongoingly engaged with absolute nakedness and intimacy as the presence of your actual experience. This being the case, this substance is noticeable, discoverable, investigable, explorable, and knowable. So, you can notice that this is here. You can notice that it's something, right? Because it is here, because it is being engaged with, because it is actually present. And it's already being engaged with, so it's accessible, it's available, it's noticeable. You can notice that this is the case. You can notice that your experience is present, not as an abstraction, but as this that is here. This amazing condition that is here, that presents itself with all of these astounding range of weird, experiential textures, call it whatever. We don't even have language for this stuff. But it's noticeable. You can check it out. It's discoverable. You can look very closely at it. You can be with it. What is vision? You can feel what vision is. What is thought? You can feel what thought is. And because you are feeling it. To perceive is to feel. Because perceiving is a very, very, very intimate engagement. When you see something, it's not over there and you're not over here. Its apparition is the seeing. It's an absolutely intimate engagement. Couldn't be more intimate. It's just completely one. So the fact that all of this apparition is intrinsically an engagement means it's explorable. You can be with this engagement. What is seeing? That's not a vague, abstract question that you can sit and think about. What is seeing? What's seeing? It's an actual concrete solidity that can be participated with absolute intimacy, just like you can participate with the ground by feeling it under your feet. You can participate with sound by hearing it. You can participate with music just by its presence and its dynamism and its amazing, range of qualities and so on and so forth. So this substance is noticeable, discoverable, investigable. You can check it out. You can look at it all different sorts of ways. It's explorable. Well, this is really interesting. You can explore it. So what is there to explore? Well, let's see. What is there to explore? You can look at a thought. Oh, here's a thought. Okay, this thought's happening. Thoughts are sort of wafting around wherever in this weird way that they do, right? But you can explore that. Where is it happening? Check out where that's happening. What's happening a little deeper there? What's happening there, but way over there, way off to the side? You can actually kind of navigate within. You can't make sense of what's happening when you do that. It's not rational. It's not something you again, it's not amenable to analysis or to description or to definition, but participatorily, you have an inconceivable, literally an infinite range of ways that you can be with this, that you can be in this. And this has infinite depths and subtleties and nuances, so it's explorable. You can go on voyages through your experience and discover astounding vistas, astounding dimensions, astounding conditions and qualities, and call it spaces, experiential spaces, that you can't describe them or anything, and yet it's experienceable, it's knowable, it's directly engageable with. And in all of this exploration, there is learning, there is a revelation of qualities, a revelation of possibility, a revelation of subtlety. And all of this subtlety is made of pure intelligence. It's not just meaningless. It's not just some inert shape or form that's just sitting there like a bloop, It's all incredibly profound, meaningful dynamism and structure. It's function. It's not a function that's doing anything that you can rationally make sense of, or even what's happening rationally make sense of. And yet, it is clearly incredibly subtle and intricate and nuanced, and there's a sense of meaningfulness, a sense of profundity that just permeates every aspect of it. And by being with it in its starting to be with it in its many forever guises, it's a learning curve, it's a sensitization. You become sensitive to its aspects, its profound intelligence, its profound meaningfulness, just by being with the astounding range of subtlety that it presents. It's like nature photographs. You ever look through like a National Geographic or something, you just see these incredible places that exist on Earth. It's like, my God, who'd have thought these colors and shapes could even exist? It's just astounding, and you see these brilliant colors and all this stuff. There's something there. It's not just inert. It's not just, oh, that's a shape. It's not like that, is it? It's like, whoa. There's a profundity there. There's an intelligence. There's a meaningfulness. There's a sensitivity that is valuable, right? That conveys value, and this conveyance of value is intrinsic to form itself, and all experience, is forms. Most of the forms are very, very, very subtle, and you don't even think of them as forms. Like, what's the form of the background of a thought? But it's not nothing. It's something. It's a very subtle, very dynamic, very nuanced form, but it is a form. There's nothing but form. There's all of this, experiential qualitativeness is all forms, and all form is intelligence, is meaningfulness, is functionality. We're very aware of the superficial, obvious aspects. I mean, look at our bodies, this astounding functionality of this form. This bizarre seeming machine that is here that can get up and walk and eat and procreate and engage in communication with seeming others and all this stuff, right? I mean, everyone knows that's profound, that's what the human game is playing with that profundity. But this is just taking it a little further and finding the same profundity in non-human contexts, in subtle contexts of any and all form, any and all experiential form. And all experience is formal. All experience has some degrees of form. So, this substance is noticeable, discoverable, investigable, explorable, and it's knowable. And the rest of the paragraph goes into this quality of knowability. So, since the faculty by which all this investigation is effected is it itself. So when you look at experience, what's looking? Where does that come from? If I say, look at your thoughts, what are you doing? Well, you can't say. It's not like there's a you and, well, what I'm doing when I look at my thoughts is I reach over here and I do such a, that's absurd, right? And yet you can do it. There's an engagement which is available, which is present, which can be a participative, which can engage, and in this engagement there is a quality of knowing, right? There's a quality of intelligent assimilation in some way, let's say, whatever it is, right? It's not like you can make any sense of it, but you can't make any sense of anything, so no surprise there. So the faculty by which all of this investigation is affected is it itself. This experiencing is what investigates experiencing, right? The fact that you are experiencing is how you investigate the fact that you are experiencing. That doesn't make sense. Well, yeah. Okay, so what? Let's forget about. Let's lose that dog. That's not going to get us anywhere. Nothing makes any sense. So, and claiming something makes sense is just an assertion of someone that wants to manipulate you. Since the faculty by which all of this investigation is affected is it itself, this faculty that does this investigation of experience has the absolutely transcendental nature intrinsic to the substance, intrinsic to what is being investigated. We were talking earlier in the previous paragraph about how what this that is here, is transcendental. It's astounding. It's weird. It's infinite. You can't get a handle on it. You can't make sense of it. You can't define it. You can't map it. You can't describe it. You can't capture it in an abstraction. It is it itself, and what that is completely just that. The only way you can approach it is as itself. You can't approach it as something else that you're putting over here. Which is just, we have a saying which captures that very simply, which is the map is not the terrain, right? But if you look at that statement is very obvious in every sense. But if you look at that statement profoundly, it goes all the way. It goes infinitely. The terrain is completely just itself. It's not like anything else. There's nothing that it's like. You can't say it's like this, it's like that. There's no it's like. So this that is here is just itself. It's not like anything. It's just itself. And if you want to check it out, you have to check it out directly. You have to let it show you what it is. You can't build a map or build a model and then check out the model and expect to be learning anything about this itself. So this faculty has the absolutely transcendental nature intrinsic to the substance. This that is here is completely beyond defining, beyond getting a handle on. And what is knowing this, which is this itself, is of course likewise beyond defining. How can you define what is knowing? How is experience known? What is it that knows experience? What is it that experiences experience? That it's a completely transcendental issue. It's a completely transcendental function, let's call it. It's a completely transcendental event. What is being known is transcendental, and the fact that it is being known and the way it's being known is equally transcendental. Because what's knowing it is as transcendental as what is being known, it can be known. They have the same infinite capacity. They have the same infinite irrational nature. So the fact that this is inconceivable is not an impediment to knowing it, because what's knowing it is equally inconceivable. What is consciousness? Right? What is consciousness? Oh, consciousness, it's right. Consciousness, consciousness, right? Oh, that's consciousness. It's dizzying. It's mind-boggling. It's completely self-evident that this presence, this that is here, is being known, is being experienced. Even though you cannot get to the bottom of what that means, even scratch the surface of what that means. You can't even begin asking the question, well, what does that mean? How does that happen? And yet it's completely self-evident that that is the case. So, since the faculty by which all this investigation is effected is it itself, this transcendental condition, This faculty has the absolutely transcendental nature intrinsic to the substance, which knowing it is as transcendental as what's being known. So, the transcendentality of the substance is no impediment to the transcendental intelligence of the knowing. Since knowing is equally inconceivable and the known is inconceivable, they can meet. They're homeboys. They're in the same tribe. They're in the same league. They're in the same transcendental conditions. So they can completely be with each other as they actually are, because they already are with each other as they are.
Can I ask a question about that?
Just a sec. So the transcendentality of this substance is no impediment to the transcendental intelligence of the knowing, and it can be fully known. So even though this is what is here, this substance, this that is present, is absolutely transcendental and inconceivable, it can be fully known. This is a very important point. It's really easy to superficially to look at this and go, well, okay, this is transcendental, I get that, so we're screwed. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm going out for a beer. No, it's transcendental, so okay, yeah, right, that leaves me out. But does it? And this is the point. Does it? Because if you look at what you are, if you look at what's knowing your experience, you find it's the same thing. It's equally transcendental. And so the fact that it's inconceivable, the fact that what you're trying to get at is inconceivable is not an impediment, because the means by which you're getting at it is equally inconceivable. They're the same inconceivable, so they can meet each other. Question?
Yeah. Just a hunch. It seems that the knowing and presence, or knowing and appearance, is actually the same thing. There's no lag time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like there isn't two things going on there.
Right. Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, okay.
And yet, that doesn't invalidate exploration. That doesn't invalidate, development of participation. That doesn't invalidate investigation and so on and so forth. So even though the instant of experiencing is entirely transcendental engagement fully manifest, its very nature is to deepen and continue to unfold to itself, which we experience as ongoing revelation, as ongoing learning, as development of sensitivity, as maturing, and so on and so forth. Okay, now in the next paragraph, I talk about why I call this substance, this actuality, radiant presence. So I'll just read the paragraph and then we'll go over it and see what it actually is trying to say, if possible. Presence indicates the actuality, the real being of this substance. And radiant indicates its inherent nature of spontaneously generating infinite apparent experiential characteristics and implications, as well as their intrinsic apprehension as what we call experience. So, presence and radiance are sort of the two sides of a coin that I'm using as handles to approach this that has no handles. Presence, this is present, right? The less said about it, the better. It's completely obvious that your experience is present, right? What does that mean? Well, you can't say what it means, can you? It's transcendental. It's not amenable to analysis. It's not amenable to sorting it out or deconstructing or trying to find the mechanism. It just is a given that it's present. But it's completely self-evident that it's present. Presence means it's actual, right? It is. Your experience is. Your experience is present. Your experience is actual. Your experience is here, right? I mean, this is just self-evident. You can take it as an axiom, but that makes it logical, and it's completely illogical. It's just the fact. It happens to be the case that this is actual. This is here. This is real. This is present. It is present. So, present. Completely clear, completely obvious. And it is radiant. What does that mean? Well, here's this present. What does it look like? What's it doing? Well, wow! Damn! Turn it down. I mean, Jesus Christ! You know? The colors, the brightness, the shapes, the sounds, the textures, the subtle weirdness, the incredible, I mean, just everything. It's like, forget it, right? It's just like, you're just being continually overloaded with too much information forever, like always, right? I mean, this is just obvious. It's this ongoing virtual bombardment with all of these incredible qualities, all of which seem to be completely different than each other, and none of which resolve into any coherence with relationship to either themselves or each other, and yet out of this incredible, jumbled, hopelessly infinite jigsaw puzzle, we pretend to piece together a world, and piece together a life, and piece together a history, right? With arrogance. But so all of this bombardment, all of this, this completely unassimilatable overload of characteristics, where's it coming from? Well, it's just present, isn't it? It's just in the presence. The presence shows up like that. Does presence ever show up without that? I don't think so. Check it out. Even when it's nothing, even when you're completely knocked out by deep general anesthesia, it may be incredibly subtle, and almost nothing, and yet it's an infinity of subtle, an infinity of nothing. It is also still a bombardment of unresolvable, incoherent qualities, characteristics. We're expert at designating certain of the more obvious characteristics like color or form or loudness, or temperature, these kinds of things. But, if you really try to catalog every experiential characteristic whatsoever that shows up within your experience, right? I mean, where do you start? Where do you stop? I mean, you just look at a nanosecond of experience and, forget it, right? Just completely forget it. It's just, completely too much information, right? It's completely obvious. Radiantly radiating within the present. Presence always shows up, as all of this astounding radiance of experiential characteristics. Calling them experiential characteristics, what does that mean? Well, who knows what it means? It's not, because you can't go further. You can't say what it is. You can't resolve it. You can't define it. As we already discussed, it's transcendental, which means it's self-evident, it's completely actual and completely obvious, but beyond that, it's just itself. It's just what it is, the way it is, and you can't go any farther than that. You can't take it farther. You can't make sense of it. You can't define it or describe it or, put it in a book, or it's just not going to work. You can't capture the actuality. So, presence indicates the actuality, the real being, that this is here, of this substance, of this that is here. It is really here. It is present. Right? It's concretely here. When radiant indicates its inherent nature of spontaneously generating infinite apparent experiential characteristics, all this stuff, all this buzz, all of this what have you, and implications, as well as their intrinsic apprehension. So the knowing of all of this that shows up also just is here, isn't it? Right? It just radiates out. It's not like the knowing needs to be found somewhere and applied, brought up, and like, let me bring up the big guns of knowing and apply it to all of this stuff that's showing. It's not like that, is it? It's in this unending overload of infinite experiential characteristics shining forth in your experience unstoppably, right? There's equally and simultaneously and essentially identically infinite shining forth of knowing, of engagement, of experiential assimilation, right? And You can't say what any of that is, what it means, right? Can you? I mean, it's transcendental, so of course you can't say what it means. But here it is. It's completely obvious. As what we call experience. So this that is present, this that is radiating as infinite experiential characteristics and their experiential engagement, experiential, call it assimilation, is what we call experience. Right? This is your experience. Right? This is it. Yeah.
Could you say experience is intelligence meets intelligence?
Absolutely. Sure. So we've talked about presence, we've talked about radiance, and this retreat is about the yoga of radiant presence. So that leaves out yoga. We haven't talked about yoga yet. So the yoga consists of first noticing, then coming to fully realize that there is in actuality nothing, and has never been or will ever be anything, other than this condition of absolutely inclusive, transcendental, intrinsic engagement of radiant presence with itself. So all this stuff that we've been talking about, this presence, the actuality of this that is here, the actuality of its astounding diversity of experiential qualities that appear with absolute dynamism, absolute instability, absolute differentiation, the spontaneous, effortless, completely intimate engagement as experience, as knowing, as participation, is this intrinsic engagement of radiant presence with itself. It's absolutely inclusive. And nothing else. This is it. This is the whole show. The entire universe. Everything whatsoever that is being, that is real, that is actual, is this. Your experience, i.e., the intrinsic transcendental engagement of radiant presence with itself. Right? And the yoga is coming to realize this, coming to see it as it is. Okay? Now, we're always seeing it, of course. We've never seen anything else, right? You've never seen anything other than your experience. So what is all of this spirituality about? What is all of this confusion about? What is the human perspective about? What is, transcendental realization about? What is infinity about? What is all this about? Well, it's very paradoxical because even though this astounding condition is all that has ever been experienced, is all that has ever existed, exactly as it is, it cannot realize itself. It can be with itself superficially. It can be with itself relatively stupidly. It can be with itself heavy-handedly. It can be with itself relatively insensitively. In which case, it perceives itself clumsily. It perceives itself inexactly. It perceives itself insensitively, imprecisely. It perceives itself by not really being with the fullness of what is present, but it was a very selective kind of an acknowledgement. And we all know this from the human perspective, right? We all know this from the human perspective. We identify with what makes sense in our lives, and all of the weird noise and background stuff and just little bizarre aspects that are obviously experientially present, we just sort of sweep them into the background. I'm getting distracted. Let me focus on what's important here. I've got this job, and I've got to get to the job, and not piss off my boss, and I've got to this, I've got to that, right? So all of these sort of very oversimplified, heavy-handed constructions of what's happening in the face of the real-time actuality of the presence of this infinite bombardment of characteristics, and we just write most of them off as irrelevant, and we ignore them, right? And this is what the human perspective is made of. This is how the human perspective, I mean, calling it the human perspective is obviously just creating a fiction, but nonetheless, this is what people who think they're people who need people. Sorry, I don't know where that came from. But people who think they're people who are stuck in the human perspective, people who are like, oh my God, I'm in this pathetic life, what am I going to do? Let me look into spirituality and see what I can do. Right? Well, how does that come about? In the face of this astounding, transcendental, really obvious, infinite presence. How does that come about? It comes about through, very selective censorship of experience. And this is what the human perspective consists of. And it is, even the human perspective, as this very censored, very heavy-handedly partialized filtering of experience through a kind of an auto-hypnotic mechanism. We hypnotize ourselves to only notice what matters. You walk into a room and you see who's in it and who's important to you, as opposed to noticing, the color of every single shade, of every nuance, of every flicker of light on the wall, right? It's like, oh God, get out of my face, it distracts me. I'm here for business, I'm here to take care of things, I'm here to impress people. I'm here to, conceal my frailties, I'm here to pretend that I have it together. All the stuff that normal human functioning and psychological participation consists of is, maintained through a kind of an auto-hypnotic denial of all of the extra information which doesn't seem to be part of the important story, the major plot line. And the consciousness is very good, it can be very good at filtering this stuff out, at distracting it. But it's at a loss. You gain participation in the human drama, but it's a great loss because you lose the transcendental infinity that you actually consist of, that this actually explicitly consists of and always has consisted of. So this yoga consists of nothing more or less than coming to notice what's actually here. And what's actually here is actually here, even if you're used to approaching it through a heavily censored mindset of a human filtering interpretive framework. Right? Because all the information is actually here. Even then, the information is here. So it's simply a matter of letting yourself notice that is the case. Notice what's actually present in your experience. And in practice, this is done by, it takes very different guises in different phases of the process, different phases of your maturity of being able to engage with it. In the more beginning phases, it takes the guise of noticing anything outside your normal framework. This can look like, walking past a beautiful flower and just letting yourself, wow, feel it. Seeing an amazing sunset and just going, or being in a situation where ordinarily you're focusing on people and events and exchanges and something in some sort of a human game structure, some human plot line that you're defining as important, and just look at the light shining from a light over in the corner. It's just there, and it's not at all a part of your story. It's not part of your relevance, but it's there, and wow, it's got something. All of a sudden, you're outside of the hypnosis. You're outside of the interpretive framework that constitutes, psychological normalcy, that constitutes your life, your so-called life. And it actually, you're engaging with your real life, which is the full field of your presence that you in fact actually are. And so this yoga consists of discovering that this is the case and developing sensitivity to being able to be with it ever more fully, ever more intimately, ever more appreciatively. And that's what it is. else can you touch on?
I have a break for Bravo. That was
It still is unbelievable.
and it is.
It still is fucking unbelievable. It always will be. That's the yoga. Feel the fucking unbelievable. that's the short mantra.
How about the quote?
Oh yeah, the quote. Oh yeah, thank you. Okay. So, when the eye is single, the entirety is filled with light. So what does this refer to? Ordinarily, we break up, the eye represents perceiving faculty and the knowing faculty, right? Ordinarily, we break up our perceiving faculty into all these pieces. Oh, I have my 5 senses or my 6 senses, and I have my eye, and there's my personality here, and I'm somewhere way at the back of it. But all of this conglomerate complication is somehow being with parts and parcels of experience and like that. But is your experience really like that? And if you look at the fact of experience, experience is being experienced as a whole, as an instantaneous, effortless, intrinsic engagement already, right? And that is being represented in this statement by the I is single. What is perceiving this is the one condition. And what is in that condition, what does this look like? It looks like an infinite field of light. It looks like an infinite field of radiance. Radiant presence. It looks like an infinite field of experiential characteristics that exist with absolute insubstantiality, absolute dynamism, absolute infinity in every regard. And this is what the perspective that Jesus was presenting is. And this is the perspective that you are in fact already always experiencing and have always been experiencing and will always experience, and coming to notice that this is the case and how profoundly this is the case is what the yoga of radiant presence is about. Any questions? Yeah.
So it was more like when you were talking about like how when you let it in, it's just like all. I mean, Wayne's World popped into my head, where they go, "Whoa!"
Sure.
It's like so. I'm wondering if part of the reason it isn't just that we focus because we're trying to get ahead or have human contact, but it's like at some point in our development, instead of it just being whatever, it starts being like too much, coming in too fast. I mean, when you notice it and you notice the unstoppability and the,
Right.
you know, that it's like you kind of become afraid of experiencing it all.
Right.
Like, or we're going to go crazy is
Right.
what we tell ourselves.
Yeah, and this is the party line of the human perspective.
Right.
The human perspective says, no, it's too much. You want me to go there. There's a good reason I don't go there, because it's too much and I wouldn't be able to function. I'd forget how to put my clothes on, and now you get arrested and now you go nuts, and I'd be locked up forever and be drooling over in a corner somewhere. Well, maybe so. Maybe yes, maybe no, but not necessarily.
Yes.
Um,
For a long time or whatever.
the fullness, being with the fullness and nonlinearity of the fullness is not a loss, it's a gain. Because, see, the fear is that this nonlinearity, this infinity, is mindless, is stupid, and it's just going to drown you in a sea of infinite shit. And in fact, the infinite field of characteristics of irrationality is also transcendental intelligence. It is what is doing all the normalcy. The irrational is what is doing all the rationality. So here we are. You've got a rational mind, right? You've got a logical mind. You can think and so on. You're relatively sane and so on, maybe. Right? Where does that come from? What's doing that? Where does your rational mind come from? Where does your logical mind come from? Is it erected from logic? It comes out of chaos, you know? You're born as a little child. What's your experience like? Wah! Right? I mean, your experience is still that. You never stop being that. And yet we learn the skills of being able to focus, of being able to participate in, linearity of, I can say, hi, how you doing? You can say, oh, I'm fine, thanks, how are you? We get these elaborate games that are based upon certain rules and all that, and we learn how to participate in that in the context of this inconceivable weirdness that experience is constantly actually consisting of. And but the ability to do that, the functioning of a rational mind, the functioning of a logical mind, is an outgrowth of and consists of and is actually being done by the irrational mind. The conscious mind is an outgrowth of the unconscious mind, not the other way around. The personality is an outgrowth of the impersonal, or let's call it the superpersonal, not the other way around. So it's not a loss to go to this barrage of infinity. On the contrary, it's a gain, because you're going to the source, you're going to the mother node, you're getting access to the full system instead of a very, very, very turned down, censored, filtered, partialized version of it that the rational mind, that the logical mind, and the psychological self of a human being likes to deal with. And yet the defense mechanism of the rational mind is, oh my God, it'd be too much. I have to cling to my rationality. I have to keep it together. I have to toe the line. I have to play the game, because otherwise, what would happen? It would be, just think of it. Oh my God, what would happen? I get locked up. But that's a projection. It's a fantasy, and the contrary is exactly the opposite happens, because the fullness of your being, the fullness of your actual functioning, of your transcendental engagement, is hyper-intelligent. And being with it as it is actually is a vast increase in functionality, a vast increase in intelligence, by the gain of nonlinearity. It's like all of a sudden you have random access. You don't need to go through channels. You can jump through hyperspace. You can use illogic to access logic from many different points of view, which is actually a skill that can show up as a really heightened functionality. I mean, look at people that are
functionality. You mean you're talking about everyday functionality?
Absolutely.
Well, the only reason
you can play the game better when you're outside it than when you're stuck in it.
Well, the only reason we use the word chaos is like another word for we don't understand how it works. But the actual intelligence, the functionality, is actually in the chaos.
Yeah,
but we
that's
just
the point.
don't understand, so we call it chaos.
Yeah, it is chaos. You don't understand it.
And the rules.
But that's not a bad thing.
It doesn't mean that the chaos doesn't have rules. We just don't understand the rules.
Chaos can break the rules.
But the intelligence
order.
has rules and has a way of doing it.
Absolutely.
We just don't know how it's done, so we call it chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. But from a functional point of view, the transcendental intelligence, let's call it, what I call it, the inherent intelligence, which is infinite, which is transcendental, which is non-linear and irrational, can break the rules of the rational intelligence to its advantage. I mean, look at people that are really, really good at anything. Look at people that are CEOs of corporations. They're not CEOs because they play the game by the rules. They're CEOs because they're saying, fuck you, I'm doing it my way, with impunity, and they're laughing all the way to the bank. And the people that are playing the game are like, stuck under their glass ceilings of being, junior vice presidents, because they don't break out. They don't learn to bluff. They don't learn to con. They don't learn to they don't learn the possible. Take advantage of the possible modes of engagement.
So going back to you call it a yoga, which to me means like a practice of some sort.
Yeah.
So let's say you're like you know, like, I mean, sometimes I can, in nature, somewhere neutral to me, I can like kind of allow it to come in and start
Sure.
noticing all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
But what do you do when you come up against your like little thought? Or what could one do, like experientially, when you come up against the thought of like, oh, it's all too much?
Right.
Are there any? I guess like just remembering it, if you can remember.
Well, no. Remembering is not such a good thing to do because then you tend to go into abstraction.
Okay.
It's always best to go to concrete experiencing. So, when you suppose in your example, like you're in the thought of, oh, it's all too much or something, I don't know what, right? Find something that is somewhere that is very peaceful, that's not too much, but that is outside go to a particular glinting of light off a corner of something that's in the corner of the room that has absolutely nothing to do with anything that makes sense, but is obviously not threatening, or in fact is beautiful. It's very peaceful. It's very serene. It's very, because it's these fantasies and projections. All too much and all that sort of thing is always a projection. It's a fantasy that is not verified and not supported by the experience. On the contrary, in general, experience of direct experience outside of an interpretive framework is generally very beautiful. I mean, it's weird and irrational and very nonlinear, but aside from that, it's luscious, it's beautiful, it's nourishing, it's full, it's alive, it's vital, it feels intrinsically valuable. It feels like like you're getting juice from it.
Yes.
That what you meant when you said breaking the hypnosis? So you kind of walk into this thing and then
Sure.
you just...
Yeah, and you don't need,
Right.
and it's important not to turn this into a game where there's a good and bad, where there's winning and losing. Being in an interpretive framework is not bad, and being outside of an interpretive framework is not good. And your interpretive framework is not the enemy, and being outside of it is not your friend. On the contrary, being outside of it is just discovering what being in it is from another point of view. So, it's very easy to approach all this in terms of, to turn into a game structure of winning and losing. Of, oh, this is bad, being this way is not good, being that way is better, I want to get to what's better, so I want to get away from what's less good, what's bad, right? That itself is an interpretive framework, which just puts you back in the interpretive framework. So there's no winning and there's no losing. It's just really a matter of just exploration. It's play. It's having fun. It's being with the possibilities in fresh ways. And it's not, so there's no downside, there's no upside. It's just really just checking it out. It's participation. It's like, well, gosh, let me see if there's another way to be with this that could be more fun or interesting, or entertaining. Anything. It doesn't matter how you hold it or how you sort of spin it in terms of what you're doing. The point is just to do it, because again, engagement is not rational. When you're engaging with experience, you're not doing what you're saying you're doing. You're not doing what you're claiming you're doing. You're doing something that's completely indescribable, right? So whatever you are saying or claiming, now I'm doing meditation. Now I'm being spiritual. Who gives a shit? That's just a spin doctoring. But that's not what's actually happening, and it's the actuality that's important, not what you're calling it. It's because actuality is powerful. Actuality is powerful, and that's the whole basis of this yoga, is that this that is here, what I'm calling the substance of your experiencing, what I call radiant presence, this amazing, inconceivable actuality that is here, that alone is here, is powerful. It's intrinsically powerful. It's doing all this. It's doing itself. It's doing you. It's doing your life. It's doing the universe. It is God. It is literally what is meant by God. Literally, this that we're talking about is God, is the source, is the divine, what have you, and so it's powerful. It's potent. It's juicy. It's the life force. It is your life force. It is your life. Your life comes from and exists within this potency, and your potency is its potency, and so being with this. And its very mode is irrationality, its very mode is transcendentality, its very mode is indescribability. Being with this as it is is opening to your own nature, opening to your own power, and this power is intrinsically transformative, it's intrinsically empowering, it's intrinsically nourishing, it's intrinsically healing, and holistic. It pulls you together. It's intrinsically integrated. That's a good way to put it.
I noticed something during your discourse yoga of radiant presence that I thought was very interesting. I don't know, maybe it's analytical or maybe it's analysis being used to deconstruct itself. I'm not sure, but it seems, and maybe it's something you've actually said explicitly at various times, because that's what you do. You kind of maybe say the same thing in as many different ways as possible.
I do kind of, don't I?
But, well, because there's only one thing to say.
Yeah, we're kind of up against it there, aren't we? What are we going to talk about today? Oh, I know.
What I observed is that as we were discussing the three elements of that name, yoga,
Right.
and presence,
Right.
and he spoke about each one of them: presence, radiance, and yoga. In all three of them, you ultimately came back to the same description or definition
Yes.
of what they were.
Exactly. Because this is one thing.
Yeah.
Yoga of Radiant Presence is a formula which approaches it in three pieces. But this is not three pieces. This is not made of three pieces. This is exactly this. This is exactly itself. This is exactly Radiant Presence. This is exactly reality. This is exactly God. This is exactly the Yoga of Radiant Presence. And all of that is just different ways of saying the same thing. In fact, every word that any human has ever and will ever utter is just another way of saying the same thing. Because there's nothing else to talk about. We could talk about politics, and what would we actually be talking about? This astounding condition, right? We could talk about ecology, what would we be talking about? We could talk about psychology, what would we be talking about? We could talk about physics, what would we be talking about? There's only one thing to talk about. This is really just an attempt to be with it as it is most directly and most comprehensively. And there's no, it's really important in practical terms to understand there's no downside here. Analysis is not a dirty word. Rationality is not a dirty word. Figuring it out and thinking about it is not a dirty word. And these things are not at all a problem because they are itself its modes. Rational intelligence and logic and all that come from are ramifications and modes of this, so they embody it just as sacramentally as any other of its aspects embodies it. All functioning whatsoever, even our ignorance and our immaturity of not being with it well, it's doing it. It's its mode. That itself is a sacred function, if you will, is a sacrament of this astounding condition. We're really just taking advantage of a loophole here. It is possible to notice and to be with this more subtly, more sensitively, more directly than we are used to noticing or used to appreciating that we are. And it's not actually a better thing to do. It's just a kind of a loophole that it can be possible to do that, and there's some really wonderful side effects of doing that, such as the cessation of suffering and the attainment of enlightenment and all this kind of fancy folderol, which can result from taking advantage of this loophole. But it's not even in itself it's not a good thing, it's just an opportunity. There's nothing wrong with being with this anyway. There's nothing wrong with normal procedures. There's nothing wrong with thinking you're a human being. And if you choose to, or if you have the ability or the inclination to avail yourself of the fact that you're actually not a human being, and take advantage of the implications of that, then that's cool, because you can do it. But in so doing, you haven't actually gained anything, because you never were a human being. And thinking you are a human being is not in any way a limitation because you never were a human being. It's like going lucid in a dream is not an advantage, it's just a possibility. Being lost in a dream and knocked around by all the bullshit, it's a big fun. It's entertainment, but what's the downside? And you're going lucid in a dream and saying, this is all a dream, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's kind of fun and exhilarating, but you don't actually gain anything. It's still just a dream. It hasn't actually stopped being a dream or started being something else. You're just letting yourself take advantage of an intrinsic possibility of being with it in a different way. And if you have an inclination or an ability or a motivation to do so, it's possible to do so. And if you don't have a motivation or inclination to do so, I don't know what you're doing here.
I wanted to, okay, I've got, your website. We'll start there.
Sure, yeah, that's cool.
I was going to talk about my dog first, but we'll go to your website.
Cool.
So you talked about, the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve, and
Yes.
and all of this, basically how we get ignorant and fall asleep, fall into rationality.
Right. Did I put that on my website?
I'm paraphrasing. It's yeah, you did. It's
I'll be darned. I mean, that's something I talk about from time to time, but I don't remember putting it on the website. I'll be
I just
darned.
saw Noah too, so it's about that's in there. It's actually pretty awesome. It's in the creation story that you can tell there. It's really great. But anyway, and I got a dog. I can go look at my dog now. Who?
You're just going to a dog as my co-pilot, kind of a.
There's never any kind of reflective self-consciousness. The dog never. I keep waiting for him to get jaded, and it doesn't happen. I mean, every morning is like every day is Christmas. And I'm so inferior to this dog in that way. I aspire to, and I'm not, and I was like the dog when I was a kid, and I know what the dog is going through, because
Sam, the good news is the dog hasn't gone anywhere. You still are the dog. You just aren't letting yourself access the inner dog. The primal dog.
It's actually dyslexic, it's fun. But no,
That's right. That's
anyway,
Only dog.
I don't even know where I'm going with this. It's just that, I think that if there was a goal to the yoga of radiant presence, to be like my dog. I mean,
Sure.
And
Or to be like a bit of dust on the floor, or to be like that light bulb, or to be like the Andromeda galaxy, or to be like you, because you already are. The cardinal evil is the idea that something's better than something else. Yeah. So the idea that state of the supposed state of the dog is somehow superior to the supposed state of Stan, let's say, or anything, that is the nature of Satan. That is the very essence of the only thing that could possibly seem to be a problem in this incredible, infinite, divine benevolence. The glue of suffering is the idea that something is better than something else. Even the hint of a sliver of an idea that there's this and that and this, that's better than this. As soon as the grass is greener, you're screwed. You're not actually screwed, and there's the rub, and which is why this yoga is so powerful. Because even when you're screwed, you're not actually screwed. So you can take advantage of the fact that you're not actually screwed to become not actually screwed. You realize that you're not actually screwed, even when you're screwed.
Because it's not better to be screwed than not.
Exactly. Yes.
Be screwed about
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Well, it makes me think.
An adept.
Makes me think, Peter, that actually, the Garden of Eden was just losing sight of the loophole.
Well, it is. It is. It is. You know, God pulled a fast one, and the kids fell for it.
Yeah.
Instead of giving God the finger and saying, "Fuck you," you know. Tree of life, tree of knowledge of good and evil. They're both life.
Yeah.
And that's the fact, you know. Being a human and being transcendental divinity are not mutually exclusive. They're not even different conditions. They're exactly the same thing, always have been and always will be. And it's thinking that they are different conditions that creates a human condition or a condition of individuality as a state of suffering. It's not the human condition that is suffering, it's the idea that there's something better that's suffering.
Well, I can't help it. It almost takes my breath away from the dog. I mean, because things don't stick. You know, the things pass and it just doesn't stick. There's no, like I said, no reflective. It's just boom, boom. You know.
The present.
Yeah. And I
Have you ever
marvel.
seen a corpse?
Yeah, pretty present.
Things don't stick there either. So see, before long, you'll be there.
Like I said.
Is that a hand up or just a stretch? Yeah.
So I was just thinking when this man was talking about how you're saying the same things, and I was listening to a recording of you, and of course this grabbed me. You started talking about how you put together some of your realization with contemplating Satchitananda, and I was just thinking of like that is like an anagram of Satchitananda, Yoga of Radiant Presence.
Exactly.
It's so cool, because I actually wanted to ask you to go in a little bit more into that, because that's, because I was kind of embedded in trying to understand
Yeah,
that.
there's all of these trinities. There's Satchitananda, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nirmanakaya, Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. All of these trinities are essentially exactly the same thing. And they're valuable not in themselves, but they're valuable to see what they're about, which is this.
Right.
This condition has a tendency to sort of seem to sort of have a strong mode of sort of a tripartite polarization, even though it isn't actually that. And so all of these different ways of putting it just reflect that. But that's not important in itself, so don't worry about that. Because the important thing is what that is. Satchitananda is not important. What's important about Satchitananda is it refers to this,
Right.
which is exactly this. And you don't need to step out of this into a formula to use the formula to get back to this. Here's this. Why not just do it direct? Why not go to the actuality? Why step out of it to step back into it?
I guess what was interesting to me was you were talking about how one of the things you can do when you start feeling overwhelmed is look at something like the glow of the lights outside or whatever.
Absolutely.
But you also can go into any of those words.
Absolutely.
I can.
Absolutely. There's endless. You can go anywhere within this, and what will tend to be powerful is if you go to something that implies or that reveals some open-endedness, and right away you'll see at least an implication of something that's outside of the universe of any interpretive framework that seems to be impeding in any sense.
Right.
In other words, you're looking at something that seems to be solid and discovering that it's a Hollywood movie set, and you can just walk around it. The jail isn't really a jail; it's just a set. It's just a wall of a set of a jail that you can walk around, and all of a sudden you're on the other side. So how entrapping is it? And all these interpretive frameworks are exactly that, because they're inconsistent. They aren't continuous. They don't actually contain anything. They're full of cracks and holes and implication. we've been with a lot, a whole lot of detail and a lot of sort of poking at this very directly tonight, and it's a lot to bite off. I realize that. This retreat is to enable you to be with this, to be with your experience as itself, regardless of what you're used to thinking it is or holding it is. And whatever you're used to thinking it is and holding it is, it's more than that. And not as an abstraction, it's more than that, right here, right now, always. And you can take advantage of that fact. And this retreat, for 4 days, you're completely outside the context of your normal life. So you can really be with this. Just let go into this experience. Let go into the full field of your presence that is always here, always doing itself. Nothing for you to do, no urgencies, no nothing. And let yourself really feel it. And we will all be doing this. We'll be exploring this. We'll be poking at this from all different sorts of ways. And of course, we got an infinite number of ways to poke at it, so, the fun never ends. So, I really invite you to, as much as possible, don't worry about your normal human mode. Don't worry about your normal socializing. And when I say don't worry about it, I don't try and suppress it, but just be loose, be easy, and especially feel the presence of your experience. Just feel it. Just feel this. Tomorrow morning, we're going to do a meditation at 9, and I strongly recommend you participate in this because we'll be doing just that for an hour and a half. You'll be feeling your experience. Period. And playing with that and having fun with it and tripping on it. And it's something that we're generally, as human beings, we don't ordinarily do. It's not one of our normal social modes. It's not one of our normal functional modes. And even when we think we're meditating, that's usually an elaborate egoic game structure. This is completely not that. This is just, fuck it. This is, here this is. Okay, cool. And that's all that's necessary. It's just being with this fact, feeling this fact, dancing with your life, feeling the inherent immersion in your actuality. It's already the case. The actuality is already here. It's already a done deal. May as well take advantage of it. May as well swim around in it. May as well trip on it, because it turns out that this is really powerful. It turns out that this is really goofy. This is really vitalizing. This is really empowering, and it's really integrating and liberating, and in unimaginable ways, just by feeling it. I mean, it's so simple. It's so easy. It's so it's so needless of process. It's just a matter of just feel the presence of your being. Feel the presence of being. And who'd have thought that solves all problems? Who'd have thought that just that, is absolutely liberating? It's absolutely, reveals your unlimited nature, reveals your absolute, all-powerful transcendentality, which is in fact the case, whether you know it or not. Always has been the case and always will be the case. You may as well take advantage of it. And if you don't, that's cool too, because you're not losing anything. So, rules of etiquette for the retreat, as far as I'm concerned, if I'm in public, I'm available. So if you see me anytime where there's other people around, feel free to talk to me if you want to or not. And if I need downtime, I will vanish mysteriously. And I strongly recommend you to participate in this as a retreat, participate in it as an opportunity to really be with your being, be with your power, be with your amazingness, be with your weirdness, be with the profound fact of how little any of this makes any fucking sense. Turns out to be a really good thing. It turns out to be a profoundly empowering thing. So that's the retreat. Any questions about etiquette or process here?
I Actually, I didn't get a schedule. Does such a thing exist?
There is a printed schedule, but it's all very simple. 8 o'clock breakfast, 9 o'clock meditation in here. A break will be announced where you can take a half hour to pee and get some tea or whatever. Then we're back in here to talk, hang out until lunchtime, and then you're off all afternoon. And every evening we're here from 7 to 9-ish or whenever. Or anything else you want to do. So that's the suggested schedule, and feel free to participate in it any way you wish.
There were more schedules down in the dining room.
Yeah, I think there's a stack there. There was
Post one on the door.
Yeah, okay. Are there any left over that are printed? Are they around? Are they in the dining room? Are they here?
I'm sorry, no, I took them all, I have them all put in.
Are they here now? They're in the room? If you just set them out at the end, and anyone doesn't have a schedule, they'll be on the table as we're leaving. Any other points of order?
Yeah,
I just want to say that Leif and I have to lock this room up.
Right.
So I'd appreciate if you want to hang around and talk afterwards, go outside, or maybe even into the dining room.
Do you know if they leave the dining room open for a while?
I think so, I think so.
Cool, yeah, the dining room can be just a general socializing area. Or, after hours parties are allowed and encouraged. With intoxicants of your choice or not.
no, it's not gonna be in the morning.
Oh, okay.
I'm not a morning person. I don't want to do anything before 8.
Oh,
I'm gonna lead some yoga. I was thinking sometime in the afternoon break.
okay, great.
Yeah, you all can announce that. You all can announce that tomorrow.
Okay.
After in the late morning
Like
session.
morning session.
Yeah,
When
and
people
then you
aren't
can just
fried out,
yeah.
we can think about it.